Size matters. It's a subject you hear game fans talk about all the time, especially fans of the space game genre, where many players prefer their galaxy and planets to be of the large variety. Now, Starfield and Star Wars Outlaws appear to be going in the opposite direction, where they feel it's not the size that counts, but rather what you do with it. And for Star Wars in particular, that means giving players the opportunity to explore some very familiar settings as well as some new ones. The game's developer, Massive Entertainment, revealed just recently at San Diego Comic-Con that players are going to be able to visit both Mos Eisley as well as its cantina. Now, this is far from the first time that gamers have been able to visit these locations, but it's one of the first times that players have been able to do so in a single-player open-world game. Whilst Tatooine probably makes a few too many appearances in Star Wars overall, it's fair to say that Mos Eisley is the ideal location for a game that's focused on scoundrel activities. In fact, the developers have been on record as saying that the scoundrel fantasy is the beating heart of Tashara, a new location in the game. This moon is heavily inspired by the African savannah. In fact, we've seen a little bit of footage, I do believe, during the game's recent showcase, but it seems that this biome is to be a huge focus for the game. The moon also features a vibrant city called Maragana. This city is built into a vast rock which over time has been eroded by wind. Now, it's going to be quite a long time before we get our hands on this title. The current release date is still set for sometime in 2024. But if the developer manages to pull off these environments as they've described, then it could be a very interesting place to explore. The idea of having living, breathing worlds and populations which are directly affected by environmental factors is a compelling idea to say the least. And it's a subject that the developers touched on in a recent dev diary. The idea then that on the windswept savannah of Tashara, the culture is very much influenced by wind. The devs have said that these types of details should be very much present as players explore the Star Wars game world. And what's more, it seems that this type of exploration is very much a focus of the game. The devs have mentioned the concept of virtual tourism, the idea of exploring the iconic Star Wars galaxy. Some people, I think, judging by the comments I've seen around the internet, may feel that Ubisoft and Massive Entertainment are pushing at this particular aspect of the game too hard. That is, the whole idea of being the first Star Wars open world game. And yeah, they do have a point. To be perfectly fair, Star Wars Galaxies has done this in the past, many decades ago in fact, and Star Wars The Old Republic has also done something similar. But the fact remains that open-world online games such as MMO or live services generally don't have worlds that are as detailed as single-player games. Yeah, I fully realise that is a generalised statement, but for the most part it's a generalised statement that does hold true. Of course, if I'm wrong on that, and I may well be, do let me know in the comments section. What examples do you have? And ultimately, that brings us on to the subject that I opened with, the idea of size. Now, I've touched on this before in a previous video, that the developers have confirmed that most of the areas, most of the planets within Star Wars Outlaws are going to be fairly limited in terms of size. In a recent interview, the studio confirmed that a single planet will be roughly equivalent to 2 or 3 zones from Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Now, for those of us who have not played that game, it doesn't give us too much insight, but here's a very rough calculation that may or may not hold true. Assassin's Creed Odyssey was 230 square kilometers in terms of its map size. This was broken down into 7 regions, so we could very roughly say that an average region was 30 square kilometers. Multiply this by 2 or 3 and you end up with a planetary map in Star Wars Outlaws of between 60 to 90 square kilometers. For reference from other games, the map from Skyrim is around about 35 square kilometers. So yeah, ultimately it seems that the worlds from Star Wars Outlaws are going to be a pretty decent size. It also explains why players are going to need a land speeder to get across these maps. Now, in case you're wondering, how does this compare to other games, specifically those set in space? Let's take Star Citizen as an example. Many of the average moons there have a diameter of around about 600 kilometers. That gives a surface area of a little over 1 million square kilometers, significantly more than anything that we'll see in Star Wars Outlaws. But it also brings us back to that other point. It's not really size that counts, but what you do with it. And no, that's not a personal quibble or anything I'm personally concerned about. but it is something that's very interesting when it comes to video games. I think the past 10 years or so have shown that size isn't necessarily everything when it comes to space-focused games. Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen have certainly proven that. Whilst those massive procedurally generated worlds with limited handcrafted content are certainly nice to explore, I don't think they're going to hold a candle to areas that are much smaller but are 100% handcrafted. Let's see how that one plays out over the next few years. Do let me know your thoughts and feelings about this particular subject in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.